Hello everyone, welcome to Progress Junior Golf with Live Sport Now and the England Golf Young Ambassadors. My name's Steve Jackson and this is Ian Waterhouse.
Hello Steve Jackson, how are you?
I'm all right, not too bad, thank you. Yep. Now, this podcast is all about junior golf. It's about the next generation of golfers. It's about getting more boys and girls playing the game of golf. This is the 20th edition of the Progress Junior Golf podcast with myself and Ian in charge, but the second with our co-host, the England Golf Young Ambassadors. So, what's the subject this evening? Well, it's another big one because we're going to be talking about etiquette in junior golf. It's a topic that's not really just limited to junior golf. It covers the full golf industry, really, but we're going to be looking at it specifically with junior golf in mind here today. So to help us out to do that, we're going to be joined by one of the England Golf Young Ambassadors, Emily Furniss. So we'll get the point of view, if you like, of what it's like to be a junior golfer and having to learn and adapt to the golfing etiquette that is needed in the sport. And we'll also get a different perspective as well. We'll get a golf club's perspective because that can be very different depending on what type of golf club you're at. So we're going to be joined by John Gilding, who is a former club secretary at a couple of different types of golf clubs. So we'll have different perspectives on how golf clubs deal with etiquette as well. And
well, talking of etiquette, Steve, I actually feel perhaps let the side down a little bit because I was going to shave this morning. I thought, no, another day. So I didn't shave. So my face etiquette has let the team down. So
that's
apologies.
It. And
I want to say sorry to everybody for that.
Yes, and yeah, what a great start. I can assure people that there are more important parts of etiquette than yes, beard.
Yes.
But yes,
beards are allowed in golf. Beards are allowed in golf.
They are, as far as I know, yes.
As far as we know, yeah.
As far as we know, yeah. No, but it's obviously a fascinating topic, and there are so many different aspects to it as well. So we're going to hopefully cover this in some detail.
Can I just say as well, so before we get on with our next section, anybody watching this and wants to have their say, please do comment below. We can see your comments. If you have a question for either John or Emily, please get them in. Comment below wherever you're watching this. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, LinkedIn, you name it. Comment below. Best place to do it is actually YouTube because then we can show your comment on screen. So head over to Live Sport now. Make sure you hit subscribe. Comment in the live chat. We can get it shown on screen just so long as you keep it clean.
Absolutely. Right, first things first. So let's do the junior golf news then. Let's start in Scotland. Then the race to the Macri final. So 5 qualified events for this event. They're from 3 Scottish junior competitions: the Paul Laurie Foundation, the Stephen Gallagher Foundation, and the Barry Douglas Foundation. The final takes place at the Macri Golf Club on the island of Islay. Have you ever been there, Ian?
No.
Well, let me tell you about this. It's a brilliant golf course, but the actual island has got, it's ridiculous how many people live there because I think it's less than 1,000 people live on this island, but it has probably one of the best golf courses you're going to play in Scotland. A little bit quirky, although they have done it up in recent years, but it's a wonderful golf course and it's a great setting for an event like this. So you can imagine the amount of people on the island, and then suddenly you've got this big competition over there as well. Anyway, it was won by Gullen's Samuel Mukherjee, a name which has been mentioned on a few occasions. There he is. He won by 3 shots. The 16-year-old is actually his twin brother, Oliver. He won the Scottish Amateur Championship at the end of July. So really good month then for the twins. Tough scoring conditions, though, it has to be said. I think there was a fair bit of rain in Scotland. I mean, who would have thought that in Scotland? Yeah. 71-78 was his scoring, though. So well done to him. Won by 3 shots in the end. The girls' event, that was won by Maverston's Summer Elliott. She beat Scotland girls champion Freya Russell from Royal Troon. I think we might have a photo of Summer. I think.
I don't know if we do actually, Steve. We don't have a photo of Summer, I'm afraid. No.
Okay, fair enough. No worries there. She won the first extra playoff hole. Scores a 76 and 79. I know which photo we've got. We've got a photo of the Scottish international Lorna McClymont.
Yes, we do.
We do because how about this? What a score that is.
Let me just take that text down.
13 under par score of 60 there. And that included, so that was at Montrose Golf Links, the R&A's Student Tour Series. It included 9 birdies and 2 eagles. She beat the course record. Have a guess how many shots she beat the course record by, Ian?
Oh, my God. 2?
6. Huh. And she actually missed the 6-footer on the last hole, which would have made it a 59 as well. So, unsurprisingly, you'll be amazed to hear she won the tournament.
Look at those twos. Look at all those twos.
Absolutely. Crazy, more twos than I've had in probably. Actually, there's more eagles on that scorecard than there probably is in my lifetime, by the way. So there you go. So
your twos, Steve, are double bogeys, not.
Yeah, good point. Yes, or 22 probably. Yes. Now,
and that's just a front line.
That's it. Yeah. Now she won by 1 shot. She only actually won by 1 shot in the end, because isn't this typical golf? She shoots 60 in the first day. Second day she shoots 79.
Yeah.
So isn't that golf? But I mean, credit to her. She still hung on there and won the tournament. So well done to her. Also, men's event. I mean, it was a men's competition. I mean, she was 22 years old. Men's event, though, once again, won by a very young golfer, one we know as well, George Cannon from Glenbervie. He beat Will Coxon from Carris Green and Ben Willis from Swavern in a 3-hole playoff after finishing 2 under par.
We've got a picture here of him and Lorna, haven't we?
That's the pair of them there, yeah. So well done to them. That was played, like I said, at Montrose Golf Links, which is one of the oldest golf courses in the world. So well done. Which surprised me when I heard that the ladies' course record there was only 66, because obviously it's been there for many, many years. So so well done to her for breaking that.
Sounds like
absolutely, yes. Well, not that she made it look like it was a tough track, but there you go.
It's only because I haven't played it yet, Steve.
Well, that is it, yes. Yeah, well, we don't know what the men's course record is. I mean, obviously, we'll have to wait until we get up there before that.
If it's anything under about 102, I'm in trouble.
Yes. Now, the next event in that series is actually at the Golf National in France. That takes place on October the 24th and 26th. Now, the Golf National was mentioned in the last podcast news, and the reason why is because the Fowler Series have been there. It finished this week, the event, and massive event for the Fowler Series. Massive event because of the prizes drawn offer. First place gets an invite to play in DP World Tour event. Second place invite for the Challenge Tour event. Third place an invite for the Challenge Tour event as well. Winner of that event was Jamie Mann from Scotland. It was a 36-hole competition, which, as you well know, is unusual for the Fowler Series. Normally, it's played over 3 rounds, 3 days, but they played 36 on the one day. 71-70 won it. He won by 1 shot from Maxim Lamb. He was actually 5 under par after 11 holes in his second round. Just held it together at the end there and parred the last hole. And let me tell you, that par was an important one as well, because Lamb and Aaron Edwards-Hill, who finished a further shot, both double bogeyed the last hole, so really did make a difference there. He was actually trailing by a shot when he got down the last hole, turned it around, won by 1 shot. So well done to him there. And isn't it great the fact that you have these events and they manage to give big prizes to go and play in some of these Challenge Tour events. And as we well know, Ian, and something which I know you wanted to have a quick word about as well, there's been some pretty bad news as far as tour events, which has just come through in the last day or so about opportunities which may not be there any longer.
No, you're right. And just before I touch on that, very quickly, I do want to give no longer a junior golfer, but Sam Bairstow a bit of a shout out. Of course, he's been involved in the England setup. I think he's played Faldo as well. He's just turned pro and he makes his DP World Tour debut at the Dunhill Links this week as well. So good luck to him. He's a prime example of what can be achieved for these youngsters coming through. But yes, the sad news, a bit of a shock actually. I think it came to a shock to a lot of people. The PGA Euro Pro Tour will be closing its doors at the end of this year. So we literally have one event left, the Matchroom Tour Championship next month. And then that's it. It's gone. 20 years of the PGA Euro Pro Tour. And it has kind of been the sort of, it's been the route, hasn't it? You play on the PGA Euro Pro. If you come in the top 5, you get your Challenge Tour card, and then you try and fight for your DP World. And so many players have come through. You know, the likes of Tyrrell Hatton, all these players have all come through, made it onto the European Tour. No more. Now, I know it's not junior golf, but it has an impact on junior golf. And since when I first started broadcasting golf 3 years ago, at developmental tour level, we had the Euro Pro, we had 2020 Pro Tour, Clutch Pro Tour, Jamaica Tour, 1836 Tour, the Tartan Tour. Within the last 12 months, Euro Pro have now gone. Jamaica are pretty much gone. 1836 have pretty much gone. It now going into 2023 only leaves the 2020 Pro Tour, the Tartan Tour up in Scotland, of course, and the Clutch or the Mizuno Next Gen Series, and so we've had this huge spike, and now it's disappearing. But somebody made a very good comment. I saw one of the comments on the Euro Pro. Golf came out of COVID very, very well. Manufacturers can't keep up with orders for new equipment, so it seems like golf is in a bit of a boom time. But at that developmental pro level, it's completely decimated in the last 12 months. We've gone from having 6 or 7 developmental tours to 3. And, it's going to have a bit of a knock-on effect, I think, over the next few years.
Yeah, let's hope that it doesn't. Oh, you mentioned that, obviously, that's a pro level. But some of these big events, amateur events, junior events are feeders to even that standard. So obviously there's going to be a little bit of a gap there, and see how that works out in months and years to go. Just staying and just with the Furniss series, they've got their grand final coming up at UAE from November the 1st to November the 3rd. And we've got an exclusive for you here, Ian, as well, because I will be going to that event. So will Sir Nick as well. So what I'm going to be saying here to anyone out there who's watching, put the email address up there for us and the website address there, Ian, because anyone who wants us to ask any questions to Sir Nick, we will do that while we're there. So we're going to get some questions to him. So we've got a month before that to get some questions to us. We will then ask Nick the questions, and we'll be doing a podcast which takes place on Wednesday, November the 9th. Which will be featuring an interview with Nick, and obviously what you've been asking him, and try and get his opinions on junior golf and things like that. So that's something really massive.
Well, if you do want to get in touch with Steve about that, there is a link in the body of this broadcast. Wherever you're watching it, it takes you straight through to the Progress Junior Golf website. Do give it a click. There's a contact form on there, isn't there, Steve? There's your details and everything in there.
Yeah, the email address is info@progressjuniorgolf.com if you just wanted to send an email there. But yeah, that's going to be a real big podcast for us. So looking forward to that. I
haven't had my invite yet, by the way, Matthew.
No, I did notice that as well.
Oh, no, it's my phone's cold. What's going on? Where's my message?
You can carry my bags for me if you want.
Yeah, I'll do anything. I'll make the tea. I don't care. Yeah, clean the toilets, not fussed.
Now, one person who did play in the grand final last year was a lad who's been mentioned on this podcast in a few games, and Monty Holcomb. He actually won a playoff to play in the Fowler Series last year in one of the Fowler Series events. Well, he enjoys his playoffs because he's only gone and done it again in extra time. This time in the West of England Under-16 Championship at Cotswold Hills. Took him 4 holes this time to actually beat his clubmate, teammate Chris Kim, rolled in a birdie on the 18th hole, second time around to win that. Now, both Holcomb and Kim have both been selected to represent England Under-16s against the Irish Under-16s. That takes place at Royal Birkdale, October the 8th and 9th. Other names which regularly get mentioned, which are part of the team: Ben Bolton, James Brash, Charlie Croker, Drew Sykes, the girls, Matilda Santilli, Nellie Ong, Isla McDonald O'Brien, Chloe Tabard, Amelia Wan, Imogen Williamson. So best luck for both sides, actually. Best luck for the Irish teams as well. Let's hope it's a really good event between the two of them. Staying in international golf, the President's Cup took place. We all know about the men's event. What happened with the junior event? Do you know, Ian?
No.
No, I shall tell you. Bit closer than the men's match, because the USA did win in the end. They won 13-11, but they were actually trailing going into the final day singles, and then the US team won the singles 8.5, 3.5 to eventually win by a couple of points there. Staying over in America, there was a young lad, a 13-year-old out there who recorded his lowest ever score, 4 under par 68 at Mission Inn Resort in Florida. He actually shot 80 in the opening round, but a 68 in his second round. Young 13-year-old. It was actually mentioned when we did our first podcast. I don't know if you remember this, Ian. A lad called Charlie Woods. I don't know if you've heard of him at all or not. We did a review of the year, and we said that he might be someone to watch out for.
Yeah, I know his dad. His dad
caddied for him, actually. So that might be why you know him.
Yeah, his dad plays chess or something, don't he? He's like famous.
Yeah. Oh,
he's a
chess is not a good subject to talk about at the moment, is it? With all
no,
definitely
we're going
to be talking about etiquette, so that's probably not the subject to talk about, the chess, is it? Of course, we are talking about Tiger Woods' son there, so well on to Charlie for that. Back on this side of the Atlantic then, Welsh Ping Junior Tour final took place at Tredegar Park. There was under 8s, under 10s, under 12s, under 14s. Unusual scoring system. I don't know if you've heard of this scoring system. Modified Stableford. So the way this works is a player receives 10 points if they get a score of 1. So in theory, if you get a hole in 1, you get 10 points. If you get a 2, you get 9 points. 3, you get 8 points, all the way down to if you get 10 or more shots, you get a point. So obviously the theory behind this, which I like is the fact that you score a point on every hole. Whatever you do, you get a point. So in theory, the worst case scenario, you're going to come away with 9 points. Winning scores then the under 8s, Rory Grocott, with a 57 points. Under 10s, Harry Smith with 63 points. Under 12s, Thomas McLean with 67 points. I could see your eyes were rolling then. Same with me. I was trying to think, does that sound good or not? The maths in my head, I was like, it sounds great. That's the important thing, though, isn't it? It
over 9 holes then. It's over 9 holes.
9 holes, 67 points. So I suppose in theory, that's an average of around about 7 points a hole, which is 3 or 4. So sounds pretty good. The under 14s, that was just played normal Stableford format, and that was a proper winning score, if you like. 44 points won that. That was Geraint Barnes, so well done to him. And just finally, just a couple of events which I'd like to mention, which I ran myself in the last couple of weeks or so. I had a Northamptonshire Wonders tournament which took place, a 9-hole competition at Delapre Park Golf Centre. A lad called James Miller from Overston Park won. John, I know you enjoy this. There he is. Guess the score then, Ian. So his handicap is 38. So obviously over 9 holes, that's half. So he played up a handicap of 90. What do you think his net score was then over 9 holes? Par 36.
God. I don't know. Put me out of misery because I'm so off with these all the time.
Yeah.
So
always. Net 18.
Net 18. Okay.
So his handicap was 38. He went round in 1 over par gross.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Pretty good going. Yeah.
So hats off to him. Well done. And there was girls' competition there, and there was other.
Maybe that needs to look at his handicap then.
Absolutely, yes. Possibly, yes. I mean, to be fair, it was played off the red tees, but even that, still, what a score. So well done to him. And just this last weekend, organised the Warwickshire Junior Order Merit Grand Final. There was an 18-hole and 9-hole competitions. That took place at Handsworth Golf Club. The girls did really well in this. Winning score was Molly Moffat from Alton Golf Club with a net 67. And Macy, there's Molly. And let me tell you, there are birds on that golf course, and they could not care less about the golfers. They literally would stand right in front of you when you're hitting a golf shot. They would not budge, kind of thing. They wouldn't move at all. So
what did you say? The net 67. There.
Net 67.
I was going to say that if you'd asked me. I'm
sure you would. Yeah. Okay, so best gross score. Then what do you think?
Oh no! I've already got my 67, so no. What was it now? Out of interest, yeah.
Okay, Macy Halstead from Kenilworth, level par gross 73. So well done to Macy. The boys winners Miles Pegg from Stonebridge and Shannon James from Coventry Hurst won the net and the gross. 9-hole categories are won by Stanley Carter and Elsie Glover. But really wanted to say a massive thank you to everyone who came along to the event. It was really well attended, and it also, if you like, brings us in. Just a quick mention as well for our next podcast, and we're going to be covering Junior Opens. So it's something which is I'm really passionate about, and it's something whereby I'm hoping to make a massive announcement about what I'm going to be doing next year in the next podcast, which takes place on October the 12th. But that's the next podcast. That wraps up the news for this one. We're going to be moving on to this podcast, and we're going to be talking about golf etiquette. Now, before we bring on a guest, Ian, I just wanted to ask you a question, because this podcast, we could go down the line and start talking about whether etiquette is good or bad. Now, I don't think we need to go down that line, in particular with the guests. What we're going to do is we're going to accept that there is etiquette out there and it needs to be. So we're going to look at how clubs and juniors can deal with it. But just a quick question for yourself then. What kind of position do you think the golf industry is in with etiquette? Do you think we've got it right in the sense of trying to get the balance between it being too strict and not? Do you think we're about right?
I think it's far too strict, Steve, to be honest with you. I think it's far too strict. And I like that there is a tradition to golf, by the way. I'm not saying rip everything up. You know me, all right? I'm a fan of the live golf thing. I'm a fan of the PGA Tour, but I'm a fan of live because it's an entertainment and things change. And funny enough, this is something that Europro put in their statement. You know, the golf fan is changing, and a traditional way perhaps doesn't quite speak how it would speak 30 years ago. I still go into a lot of golf clubs with broadcasting, and they're a lot more laid back than they were, by the way. I just wear trainers now when I'm broadcasting that. Nobody's ever said anything to me. I've never not been allowed in a clubhouse. I'm walking around in my trainers. Nobody's really bothered. And I like that side of things. But, you know, we're too strict on certain things. I like the fact that there's respect. But I think there's respect in pretty much every sport. You know, in football, you shake hands after the game. It's what you do. In golf, you shake hands after the game. In tennis, you shake hands after the game. Most sports have a level of etiquette, but this is sport still at the end of the day. Certainly clothing is a big thing for me. I mean, you know, it's sport. You know, I'm not saying wear football shirts and tracky, or, you know, but then again, I actually wouldn't have a problem with that personally. Yeah, I think we still got a long way to go, to be brutally honest with you. And when I say that is, I think the stereotype that comes from the outside to change people's perception to get themselves into golf, we've got work to do in order to change that perception. Because if you're involved in golf, you know, actually it's not that bad. But if you're looking from the outside in, you know, I've told you the story before when my mum wanted to come down to the golf club because we were broadcasting a tournament. She didn't think she was allowed to come up. So I'm not a member. I'm not allowed to come. Of course you are. Just turn up. You know, it's a bar. You know, like they want you to come. And it's things, you know, we need to change. It's too strict. Is where we are. We're not there yet, and there's a long way to go without completely ripping up tradition as well.
The one certainty is, and we will get the guests in now, but the one certainty is the fact that from the outside you can't make the changes. But if we get people into the sport, that's where you can make the changes. Just look at government. You know, the Labour Party have been out of power for many, many years. They want to make changes, but without being in government, you can't make the changes. And that's the same in any industry. It's the same in the golf industry. And that's what we're going to be talking about today with our guests, because we want to get people into the industry to make the changes.
When we talk about that, a thing that's got to change, it's not necessarily etiquette, but it does create an issue with etiquette, is the rules. The rules. You know, something needs to be done about the rules because,
Hold fire on that one. We might be doing a podcast on that one. Right, let's get the guests in then. Let's. So we've got Emily Furniss, who's an England Golf Young Ambassador, and John Gilding, who's a former golf club secretary at 2 different golf clubs. There they both are. Good evening, ladies and gents. How are we this evening?
Good evening. Fine, thank you.
Good. And Emily, are you okay?
Yeah, not bad. Thank you. Good. Thank you.
Good. Right. Okay. So we are going to be talking about etiquette in the golf industry, and in particular junior golf. Then, so let's start with Emily first of all. Then, if you don't mind me asking, I know you're not supposed to ask a lady her age, but if you don't mind me asking, how old you were and when you first got into golf?
I took golf about 10 years ago now, so I was about 12. Introduced by my dad, as probably a lot of us. So yeah, I've had 10 years of experience. So.
And when you first started out, what kind of issues did you have to deal with etiquette? Was it something which you had to learn almost immediately, or was it a gradual thing?
With coaching, so it's quite a gradual kind of introduction, more and more ready to move on to the big R3 where you just kind of hit it and it was like just for us in a safe. Got taught it gradually through our coaching sessions. Just at a certain point to like yell for and you know, just things like that, and then at the end of take our hats off and then shake the hands of all the rest of us. So yeah, it was just introduction to it. So when we went up on kind of less of a shock.
Yeah, I don't know if it might be my earphones or whether slight issues with your microphone there, Emily, at all, or not. It might be me. But anyway, if we move on to John, then obviously you work as a golf club manager. I'll be kind to you. I won't ask you your age. But when did you first get into golf? When did you first start playing?
About 27. Passed my bank exams and was given a grant and used the money to buy my first set of golf clubs.
So you weren't necessarily a junior, but obviously as a golf club manager, you had to deal with juniors. Is that something where it was difficult for you as an older person to have to relate to them?
I think it's very, very important when they do actually have a meeting with a golf club secretary, and if he is available, they won't be afraid to go in and ask him questions. Because lots of things they do wrong is through ignorance rather than particularly.
So if we come to Emily, I don't know if we are having a few issues with microphones here at all or not, but when you first started playing golf, then, like you say, I'll give you an example of when I, not necessarily golf, because I didn't really join a golf club until I was probably similar age with John, actually. But I remember when I was very young and I went to scouts, and it was intimidating going into an environment whereby I felt a little bit uneasy and things like that. Is that something which you felt as well when you first turned up at a golf club?
A little bit, yes. I was kind of nervous when it came to like meeting all the new people in the coaching sessions that we had. But the way that the coach kind of encouraged everyone to just kind of rally each other on, probably within the space of about 15 minutes after getting into that first session, I felt really at ease, and I felt like if I did make a mistake with anything, then I wasn't going to get shouted at for it. I was just, encouraged to do something a different way, or to try something a different way and see how I would feel about it, rather than just being like told off. So yeah, it made me at ease quite quickly. And yeah.
And when you first went there, were you on your own? Were you with people, other children who were in similar position, that it was almost their first time as well?
It was kind of a mix. So what they did is they tried to set it up so the coaching sessions we had were a mixture of slightly more experienced juniors and then, less experienced, but within the same age group. So we felt kind of more comfortable, no matter what stage we were at in our golfing journey, we could, relate to at least one other person. So it made it a little bit easier to kind of, enjoy it without feeling the pressure.
And with yourself, John, obviously, when I did the first introduction with yourself, I said that you have worked with two different golf clubs. So you worked for the golf club which was a more newer golf club, and then moved to one which was the oldest one in the county. How did the way that you dealt with juniors differ from one to the other?
With the newer club, you could be much more relaxed with them and talk with. In the more established club, the oldest one in the county, there were still rules that we had to live by. Now, the golf club secretaries, by the committee, they set the rules, and the secretary basically, so you have to take the lead of what the committee of the golf club wants. One small thing, I was down at Rye for a few days. But we read through the rules, and if you wore shorts, you had to have knee-length socks turned over, and it's almost like going back to the dark ages.
It's something we will come to, talking about dress codes and things like that. But let's go back to the club which was the newer golf club, and also, without going to too many details of the manager you had, it was a very new manager you had as well, or owner of the golf club, in the sense of he didn't really know much about the golf industry. And in some respects, did that help with trying to develop juniors, because you didn't have those traditions?
No, very, very much. It was of the father had the land and was setting up a golf course as a way of diversifying the country. Loads of new courses sprung up, and they actually were forced. They didn't go along with all the old etiquette and rules. They then came up with their own people in, and money was all important to get them up and running.
I mean, for people who aren't aware as well, the golf club which you were a manager of, it brought through Ryan Evans, who's been on the podcast, a friend of both of ours, gone on and played the European Tour level. Now, he was slightly older. He was the age of 16, I think, 15, 16 when he first joined the club. But some of his friends were younger. So how did you deal with them? Because you would have been probably their first contact when they first came to the golf club.
Yeah, I was a little bit naive, actually, because one of them had a birthday and juniors up to Woodall Spa when I had the voucher, and put Woodall Spa on the Hodgkin course. And somebody said to me afterwards, etc., you realise what you've done? And I went, what? Oh, that ilk. As far as I was concerned, I've given them a good day out. But you have to about taking juniors away in a car. That's how it was. But
what kind of experience?
With people like Ryan Evans, from a very young age, Ryan Evans was a very mature person, very mature golfer. And basically, we're good company with them.
So from your point of view, yeah. So moving on to Emily then. So from your point of view, Emily, when obviously when you first started playing in competitions, how did the etiquette and how did the things that you had to learn start to develop, and how did your understanding of the things which you could and couldn't do become more apparent?
So it kind of changed quite a lot when I went from even just the 9-hole competitions up to the 18. So when we started interacting with kind of the older juniors, the more experienced juniors, we just kind of picked up on their behavior, and even like just before the round, knowing to be quiet on the first tee. That was something we weren't taught in coaching, but it was something that we picked up pretty quickly when one of the older juniors would come to us and be like, right, we need to be quiet now. We need to do this, or remember to do this once you've, finished your first hole. Or they directed us kind of really well. And the juniors at the golf club I was at when I was younger were really good for helping the younger juniors come through and understand the etiquette, so as that we don't kind of get disqualified from competitions. And it worked really well, and not many of us did get disqualified in our first few competitions because we had some good role models.
Well, it's interesting you say that the juniors were the role model. Where did the lead come from there? Did the lead come from the club to get juniors who were good role models, or did it really just come from the juniors of them knowing what to do and trying to be leaders themselves?
I think it was a mixture of both, but a lot of the juniors were playing to quite a high standard. The coach that I had at the time was really good at what he did, and got quite a few, young England development players coming through. And so they just kind of knew what they were doing at the time, and just, especially the ones that were like females for us to look up to, it was really, really good for us to see them get to where they've been. And they explained to us kind of step by step how they got there, and even like down to the littlest thing of taking your hat off at the end of the round. It's just nice, and then it looks good, and it's just, they feel like they kind of owed it to the club that they're at to be a good role model for the next generation, and they want others to do the same as them and to reach their potential. So it really did come from a bit of both.
I mean, obviously, this podcast, what we're trying to do is we're trying to give advice to juniors, to golf clubs, to golf unions, and different people within the industry about how they can make the experience better for all junior golfers. So when you're listening to that, John, obviously you're no longer a club secretary now, but looking back now, when you hear Emily say something like that, is that something now whereby you did at the time, you thought, right, I need to have some role models with the juniors to help the younger juniors come through, because if I don't have that, they will struggle to be able to learn and fall in love with the game?
Yes, if a club doesn't keen junior organise it, and I think Northampton Golf Club is a lot of very keen people, and they've had a very good, strong success. Then the older juniors will actually encourage the younger ones and help them.
How much did you use Ryan then, when he was at your golf club? Because, like you say, he was a very mature, junior golfer, and also a very good one as well. Pretty quickly, he became a very good golfer. So, how did you use him to do that?
Basically, and sometimes in an 8-ball, which you get that you wouldn't at one of the other clubs. Used to be New Year's Eve, or we'd go out and basically have a bit of fun, and you get away with it. Competition, Ryan would be able to take the juniors with him and actually help them they should do on the course. Because suddenly when you get away from practice out to the big wide 18 holes, it's pretty frightening the first time. It's quite scary out there.
I think we might have a photo of a golf club venue. Hopefully Ian is going to put it up on the screen here. And obviously I know you can't see it, Ian, but so you can't see it, John. But I'll tell you that it's Wellingborough Golf Club. So obviously you know what the hall is like at Wellingborough Golf. When you turn up at a venue like that, it's a magnificent venue to go to, but it can also be a very intimidating place when you arrive there. Have you ever had that experience, Emily, whereby you've arrived at a venue and you've thought, I feel out of place here. This is a bit too big for me, a bit too, I don't know, what's the word, grandeur for me. Have you had that experience?
Yes, so I used to go to junior opens quite a lot. When I was younger, I used to love going and playing the different courses, but there were times where, you know, my mum and I would rock up and we'd just sit there and we would be like, right, I don't even know how to get into this clubhouse, let alone find my way around to the pro shop or the registration desk. And you probably have a 10-minute hunt and then you're flustered before you even get to the registration desk. So there have been times where, yes, it's been a little bit daunting, or very daunting actually. And to be honest, sometimes my golf suffered a little bit because I was so flustered and couldn't calm down enough before I teed off. But then other places, they've had, you know, buildings just as grand as that, but they've had their doors wide open. They've had perfect signage. They've even had little like reminders for the juniors to do certain things to get into certain places. And the registration desk people were so nice and friendly that actually I ended up playing some of my best rounds at the biggest, you know, most grand clubs and clubhouses, but it was the people that made me feel comfortable, and that was where probably my best golf came from.
And there's a clear message there, isn't there, John? The fact that if you want to attract juniors, that's the way to go about it, isn't it? To put on a show, put on a place whereby they feel safe and feel as if, you know, friendly environment and how. But from a golf club's point of view, how difficult is it for clubs to sometimes relate to a junior in that way?
This is where you get the other end of the scale, Steve, that a senior member is paying £1,000, £1,200 a year. He works all week. He can have one game a day because he's got home responsibilities as well. A junior is paying £80 for the year. During the summer holidays, plays every single day. So from that point of view, at weekends going through the winter, it would be nice for the adults as well, and gave them a little bit of courtesy for weekend. I say this is a two-way thing. The juniors have got to be encouraged because it's one of the county teams. And this year we brought in 16, 15, 18-year-olds. Now, unless we've got those coming through, county golf will soon be dying. We had a huge surge recently, but that's not going to last coming through.
Now, obviously, we've talked about the golf club, which was a little bit newer, where Ryan was at, and you moved to a golf club which was the oldest in the county. And you know, obviously, this is not a criticism of that golf club, because I don't think it's particularly dissimilar from a lot of golf clubs in the county. But we would have come across older members who would be very traditional and have their views of etiquette. And when they see a junior making mistakes, which is inevitable, they would have come to you as a secretary. So if you can give some examples of how you dealt with that, because it wouldn't have been easy, would it?
And it used to happen reasonably regularly. We was in the junior ranks. One was Charlie Hull, who wasn't particularly a problem. I'd be called out to go out on the course on a buggy with a long stick to try and get some golf. We'd have hit a bad shot and the golf club went straight up in the air and caught in the tree. Members saw that. The junior would be in front of the committee, tried to handle the thing, because they have got spirit, but it's got to be within. Lots of the older members didn't have much time for juniors because they paid a lot of money to go out, and in those days didn't really want to encourage too many juniors because it cluttered up the course. have just about long gone. In the old days, juniors weren't allowed to win at weekends. Then it became they had to have a handicap of 12 to play in the monthly medal. We'd organised separate medals for the juniors. 8-10 years ago, that they were allowed to come in fully into the ranks former membership. And I think Kettering was probably one of the very first to have ladies and men playing in the same medal competitions. So, although they did have a fair bit of progression.
Is that something you experienced when you were growing up? Is the fact that you, Emily, this is for you. So, when you weren't allowed to play in certain competitions with the ladies or even the men, were you kind of like prevented from doing so because you were a junior?
Yeah. So, at a certain kind of point in time, there were a lot of us, like young girls coming up where we were probably like 15, 16 years old. And the ladies didn't like it because we would win everything. Because obviously our handicaps were still on the decline. And, you know, we were the ones who, like you said, we would practice all summer. Yeah. So like my mum and dad would drop me off at probably 8 o'clock in the morning and pick me up at 5 o'clock. And I would love that because I'd have like a set routine every day, 5 days a week. And then I'd reach the last few rounds and I would literally, at one time I got cut from, I think it was about 12 to 7 in like over the space of 2 competitions, which was actually just the weekend. So yeah, there was a time when the ladies didn't particularly enjoy having us about, but I think once they realized how useful we could be to, like, you know, to the ladies competitions, to the clubs, the away, the matches, the scratch matches, we kind of got included quite a bit more. But it's just that in between where they feel like we're slightly too young and they don't think it's fair that we're winning everything, and then kind of getting up to the 17s and then the 18s, and then you start to get included again. So it has been a bit of a roller coaster. You never know whether you're coming or going. It's not always the case, but certainly with some of the girls that I know growing up, that was an issue.
Now, one thing which John mentioned with Ryan Evans in particular was the fact that he was very mature, you know, and it's obvious to both John and myself the fact that you're a very mature young lady yourself, Emily. But let's be honest here, we've all been through it, whereby we've been teenagers. You know, there's been moments whereby we've said things that we, you know, when we were a little bit older, we've regretted, and because we were teenagers, kind of thing. Now, to you, John, how do you have to adapt to that and deal with that? Because you have to, at points, you just have to take a step back and go, they're growing up. They have to learn from their own mistakes. So how do you deal with that type of situation?
A one-on-one in the office with the door shut. I always operated an open door policy. Had an instance like that, I'd have the junior in the office and try and explain why he couldn't do what he did, or she. Try and slowly bring them around so they understood why and what impact that had on the club. There were some pretty outrageous things they used to do as well.
I mean, and some of them would be quite innocent, wouldn't they? Or at least they would feel it was quite innocent, kind of thing. But obviously, to some of the more established members, and it would feel like a big deal. And I keep on making the comparison here. It would have been very different from one golf club to another. So when you go from one to another, it can be difficult to adapt, can't it?
Oh yeah, I mean, they'd be chipping onto the putting green, and then they'd be chipping from little chips. They'd be 10, 15, 20, 30 yards. Thin the ball, and we've had a house. And have to explain to them what they're doing. To them, they're just having fun, but it can have really serious consequences. Did damage to them.
Have you ever had an instance like that yourself, Emily, whereby you've had a telling off for doing something, and if so, how did you feel when you had that? You can be honest.
I mean, There have been a couple of instances where one of them, looking back now, probably was a bit of health and safety risk. We weren't allowed to wear any kind of golf shoes in the clubhouse, and at that time there was no trainers. So instead, us juniors decided we would wear socks, and we would get told off quite a lot. Looking back now, as someone who's grown up a lot and understands the issues that could have caused, I understand. But as a junior, you're trying to actually not break the rules, and you end up breaking them in another way. So we were trying to be respectful by not wearing our golf shoes, and we ended up probably annoying more people not wearing golf shoes and not wearing any shoes than we would if we'd have just shouted across the shop, "Please, can I have this? I've got some change." It might have been a bit annoying, but at least it wasn't breaking any of the club rules. So
obviously, we both of you have mentioned dress codes. We did do a podcast on junior golf clothing and junior golf equipment, but I think it is an important issue that we probably actually, you mentioned, John, there the clothing that golf club down in Kent that you went to. A Rye Golf Club. Now, I'll give an example of something which happened where I ran a junior event at a golf club. I won't name the name of the golf club, but I think this is it might be one that I've already mentioned on the podcast, but I think it's well worth mentioning because it's a very important story. It's the fact that I was organising a junior opening event, and when we were doing the results, for whatever reason, there was quite a delay in sorting out the results. So to do the presentation took a little bit longer, and by that meant that the parents who were coming to pick up the kids were waiting around for too long. Well, longer than they expected anyway. And what was happening is that they were turning up in jeans at a golf club, a very prestigious golf club, and the club captain was stood on the reception desk having a go at them and saying, "You shouldn't be wearing that at my golf club," kind of thing. So it was the adults who were getting told off, not the juniors. The juniors are all dressed perfectly fine and everything. Now, let me tell you, a week later, that golf club changed their clothing policy because they were so ashamed of the way that their captain dealt with the adults at a junior competition. So it was actually a flip around of, it wasn't the juniors who were in trouble, it was the parents, and it was the golf club captain they were ashamed of, kind of thing. So it can actually work the other way. I'll give you another example of a golf club recently whereby there was members who were on the golf clubs who were having a go at a junior for not tucking his shirt in, and then when they walked away, they then had a go at someone else, and in the end the members got in trouble for the way that they dealt with the juniors, you see. So is that something you've had to deal with as a club secretary, John, whereby you've almost had to do it the other way around, whereby instead of having a go at the junior, you've had to go at the members and the adults for the way that they've dealt with the juniors?
Yes, we'd rather, in those days, we didn't want any interactions. If they had a problem, they should come to myself, who was there during the day, to actually the position. If you started with members shouting at the juniors and the juniors shouting, so we didn't want the adults to interaction with the juniors of order, as far as I was concerned.
And not obviously this podcast is about etiquette as well, and we're talking about etiquette in junior golf. But what about etiquettes of parents? Because there are a lot of parents out there. I don't know whether this is the situation with yourself, Emily, but I don't doubt it would have been probably with some of your friends who know nothing about golf whatsoever. Their child might wanted to play, so therefore they would turn up at a golf event and not know the etiquette of the golf club, kind of thing. So have you got some examples of where that's happened and how you felt where it's the people around you, the parents or the supporters who've kind of got into trouble?
Yeah, so kind of like you said, when I would go away to junior opens, we'd like carpool. So one week it would be one parent taking 2 or 3 of us, and the next week we just kind of like rotate on a weekly basis throughout the summer. So we'd actually give our parents a weekend off every now and then. And there was one parent in particular who the only reason that they wore a kind of a polo shirt with a collar on it was because they said, "Oh well, that's what my son's told me to do." But he didn't say anything about jeans because you wouldn't think, usually you're just expected to know, and if you've never had the experience, you haven't grown up around other people and you haven't seen what a lot of golf clubs could have been like, then you wouldn't know not to wear jeans. And I know nowadays it's quite different, and you know, I'm actually now working at a well-established golf club, but we have actually finally moved from temporary dress code to jeans are now officially allowed in the clubhouse, and trainers are allowed in the clubhouse. But yeah, to a lot of people you wouldn't know that, you know. It's one of those things where it's kind of quite a small group of people, and if you don't interact with them on a daily basis, you wouldn't know what would be the correct way of going about, you know, going to a golf club, wearing the right things, or what people think should be the right things. So yeah.
With yourself, John, is that a conversation which you had at your golf club about dress codes, about possibly changing them and making them more adaptable? And if so, what kind of conversations did you have about what you felt that you should and couldn't do?
Yes, because juniors, the most expensive pair of shoes they had were, which for their pride and joy, were the cleanest shoes they had. They had ordinary shoes which they kicked footballs and looked horrible, but the smartest shoes they had were that. So in the end, separate rule was made that juniors could wear clean, smart. That was followed at Kettering, with jeans being allowed in the clubhouse, and realised that lots of the ladies had absolute super costing hundreds of pounds. And I think the old-fashioned rule, the workmen used to wear jeans to go to work in. They had a ruler down the side and a little put in paint and mess. So jeans, as they knew it, weren't. So they did eventually change and allowed trainers for adults clean jeans as well. So that was not on the course, but you want to attract people in to spend money in the clubhouse as well, and they wouldn't stay if they couldn't.
It's quite funny you mentioned that. I don't know whether you have these, Emily, since when you were at school, but we used to have non-school uniform days occasionally. And I always remember when we had a non-school uniform day, everybody, I mean, I'm joking, everybody would wear jeans. So it would be the only day of the year whereby we would all look as if we were wearing school uniform, because we would all be wearing jeans. Whereas obviously for the rest of the time when we're supposed to be wearing school uniform, we'd be wearing different coloured trousers or whatever. You know what I mean? You see, so it was almost like we had our non-school uniform day was the school uniform day. It was strange how it kind of like worked out that way. John mentioned about clubhouse rules there as well. I'll give you a story about, I was at a golf club once where I was talking to someone, and then I was ready to go out on the golf course, put my coat on, just as someone came in and started talking to me. This is me as an adult, so it's not me as a junior kind of thing. But I was talking to him for about 5-10 minutes, and the member of staff came over to me and said, two of the members have just asked whether you're staying in the clubhouse or whether you're leaving, because I had my coat on for 5 minutes, you know. And your eyebrows raised there, Emily, in the sense of, really, you know, and that's what I was like, really, you know. And now I'm an adult, I could cope with that kind of thing. But if that had happened to a junior golfer, you would have felt, I don't want to be here. That's not the kind of place, you know. To me, it was completely unacceptable. I mean, I wanted to go over there and laugh at them, kind of thing. But I just thought, look, if you're going to be like that, then fine, I will leave, you know. And I'm not joking. I've not been back to the golf club ever since. So they did well. They got rid of me. You know, but that's the kind of attitude which, you know, when I said to Ian at the start, in the sense of, we're not having a debate here about whether etiquette is right or wrong, or whether we should have it or not have it, but there are certain ways of being able to express that and be able to mold it, if you like. Do you think, is the question I raised with Ian, and I suppose it's something I should ask both of you too as well, is do you think that we are on the right track in the sense of with junior golf, and with you, Emily, do you think we're on the right track trying to get the message across?
I do agree to some extent that I think some of the rules could be relaxed. You know, I've had an experience where we've had a competition, and unfortunately this girl is like actually full on broken her foot, and she was changing her shoes out in the car park because she couldn't actually walk back in to change her shoes, and she got yelled at by two members. And then she went back and told everyone at our golf club, and to be honest, I think most of the juniors refused to go again. So I think to a certain point, you do have to be more flexible if you want to encourage, you know, just more members, more players in general. It doesn't even have to be juniors, just new members full stop, who aren't so aware of all like the niche little things that you have to do. Like, it's just, yeah, there to some point I think having those little kind of bits of respect, taking your cap off and shaking someone's hand at the end of the round is really important, because for me that taught me respect when I was growing up. Having little things where you know that you have to do something because it, not just because you have to, but because you learn something from that. And yes, so yeah.
And what about yourself, John? Do you think that we're getting the balance right, or do you think that there needs to be more work and better work done on that with juniors?
Each golf club is autonomous, so you can't dictate in the rules of golf. Etiquette applies to that particular golf club. We all play by the rules of golf, but the etiquette side, as I say, Ride Golf Club have got their old-fashioned rule not changing. Kettering Golf Club has evolved and changed considerably. Places like Wellingborough still have quite a lot of old tradition, but have been juniors on all the opens that I've attended. I've got a grandson who's just 12, and I've been over the junior opens and so on. And they seem very accommodating for the junior, which I think is brilliant. But I think it's important whenever you join it, find out what etiquette rules that particular club has, what dress code they have, because they are all different.
How easy is it to do that though? Because presumably, have you ever turned up at a golf club, Emily, whereby you weren't aware of it? I mean, is that the first thing you think of? Do you think, well, I better check to make sure I'm allowed to wear this when I go to this golf club?
I only started doing that after I got told off. So it definitely left a lasting impression, not particularly a positive one, but the outcome was that I did start checking. Okay,
so on that point, have you been back to that golf club? Or when you went back to that golf club, did you feel different when you went there than when you went the first time? In the sense of, did you feel as if you felt felt welcome? That's the phrase I suppose I'm looking for.
Well, I felt that embarrassed that I actually didn't go back into the clubhouse, and I got my mum to get my shoes for me out of the changing rooms. And both my mum and I decided that we probably wouldn't be back unless it was for a specific reason, and I haven't been back since. But that's partially because I've moved away now. So I probably would go back now, now that I feel like I'm, mature enough to handle being told what is expected of me. But as a junior, no, I didn't want to go back, and I didn't.
But it's a very important message you said there, isn't it, John? That the power of the customer. If the customer doesn't come back, then suddenly you are missing out, kind of thing. But as a golf club, would you ever know that? I mean, for example, Emily, I don't suppose you ever told that golf club, did you? So it's not as if they would they ever get the message?
I didn't. I think, and I actually convinced my mum not to say anything because I didn't want to cause any hassle with anybody. But I probably should have done at the time. And, if something happened and I saw something at the golf club I work at, I would mention it to my superiors now. But no, I didn't tell anybody at the time.
And would you have you been in that situation, John, whereby you've had that kind of message come back to you to say, you do realise this happened at your golf club, and the word of mouth is powerful, because Emily would have told her friend, who would have told their friends, and suddenly before you know it, that one story might have been passed on to 10 or 12 different people, and 10 or 12 different people wouldn't have wanted to go to that golf club.
Yeah, and the story always changes from one person to the yeah. I did say earlier that members to interact verbally with the juniors. I want them to come in and see me. Junior in to have a quiet word with them. So one-to-one with me, they could say what they closed door rather than upset everybody. When things are done out and people start, it's not the way to handle things. I don't want members talking to the junior, the person behind the bar or the secretary, what the problem was, and let them handle it. Because juniors, do need telling off at times or pointing in the right direction, but not just shouting, "Oi, what are you doing changing your shoes?" Because there's usually a reason.
Now, the important thing we need to stress here as well, and I'm sure you'll back me up on this, John, is that Kettering Golf Club has got a very good progressive relationship with their juniors, and I think Charlie Hull is probably one of the massive inspirations there, in the sense of, you know, someone who's come through the ranks and gone on to become a world superstar. But there's other players there that they've got a massive junior section there. They regularly host the county junior or the merit grand final. So this is no criticism of them as a golf club, because they are more progressive than some golf clubs. But I think even they need to learn a little bit, about how to make themselves even better. Is that correct?
Yeah, they suddenly had good junior organisers who took over. I think Nick Keach and Dad decided to do the juniors because they both had sons, and all of a sudden thrived, prospered. We're getting lads come through into the county, loads of them playing for the county juniors, and that's how a progressive golf club can still things that they can learn, but also some of the juniors are still pretty volatile and do need just calming down at times.
Okay, we're going to be wrapping up anyway soon anyway. But just finally then, from you, John, first of all, and then we'll come to Emily. But what would your advice be then to a golf club then, if they feel as if they might need to work on the way that they deal with juniors and the way that their etiquette goes? What would be your overriding advice to them?
Yeah, relook at what they've been doing, because most of the things have just evolved over the specific policy laid down. Lay down a complete etiquette and make sure that each junior was issued with it. Then as many juniors together as you can, and basically go through it with them. I feel ready to read. I mean, I printed out when we were doing this. I printed out bits about golf etiquette, 5 pages scattered around me. Who's going to read them all? That's before you actually get on. Yeah, that's the rules for good golf etiquette. The rules. That's pages and pages before you get onto the rules of golf. Have the juniors together, have an evening, and go through all these things with them, so they all know, and then give them a written copy, just so that they can reinforce it. I think it was.
Actually, just a point, we are going to be doing a podcast on the rules of golf, and we're going to do something with juniors about that. But I do know that Kettering Golf Club, for example, during the winter months, I think you just alluded to it there, John, they used to do rules quizzes during the winter months as well, which I think is a fantastic idea for teaching the rules of golf to juniors in a fun, friendly way, kind of thing. But just finally then with you, Emily, as far as etiquette is concerned, you obviously work as an England golf ambassador, so you will have a role to try and pass the message on to clubs from a junior point of view. Is what would your message to be to a golf club to say, how can you get me on board, a young me when I was 10, 8, 9, 10? How can you keep me this golf club?
I think it's just be patient. Don't lose your temper over something, because to be honest, 9 times out of 10 that junior has probably not realised they've done something wrong. And that for me was a big one, because I would always feel so guilty, and I would work myself up feeling like I've upset somebody. You know, if I've broken one of those niche little rules that you wouldn't find anywhere else, and I've had someone come up to and be like, you shouldn't be doing this, you should do this. And it would really kind of work me up to the point where I would honestly feel like sometimes when I got told off that bad, I couldn't breathe, because I felt so upset that I'd done something wrong. So learning how to explain in a patient manner that, at this golf club, I would recommend doing this, don't do that. because a lot of the time, the more negatives you throw at someone, either the less likely they are to listen or the more likely they are to get worked up and forget, which was probably happened quite a lot in my experience. So yeah, just be kind, be gentle, and you know, those rules evenings weren't a bad idea. At the golf club I was at, we would have a rules evening run by our county secretary for the, it was mostly for the junior girls, but you know, my coach used to do the occasional thing as well, where we would have a rules evening every year in February, like pre-season, but we wouldn't just have the rules in there. We'd have like little questions going like, oh, what do you do at the end of your round? And then it would be a take your hat off, shake your hand, do this, do that, all of the above, you know. So it would just like keep reminding you every year, just the little things, you know, if you haven't played that much over the winter, to jog your memory without kind of forcing it down your throat. So yeah, just be nice, be kind, and be patient, really.
And for anyone who's watching out there, if you are wondering whether there are some junior golfers out there and what kind of person they can turn into, I think Emily's a pretty good example of if you look after them, they can turn into some wonderful people and be helpful, hopefully, for more junior golfers out there. Look, I really appreciate your time. Thanks very much for coming on, John, and obviously giving it, because it was important that we had it from a golf club's point of view as well, because it's very easy for us to stand back and go, you know, this is what they should be doing. But obviously golf clubs have different pressures from members and from tradition from the golf industry as well, whereby they have to bring that factor into the way that they go about things. So it was important, the fact that we heard from the golf club point of view, and of course well done for Emily as well, and to hear from a junior's point of view, because you know, we're too old now. We can't remember those years ago when we were your age, kind of thing, you see. So it's important that we do get try and get the perspective from all different angles, and hopefully we can make it a better experience for everyone then. Right, so that's it for this evening then. Just to give you an idea about the podcast that we've got coming up, the next one will be about Junior Opens. That's in 2 weeks' time. We're going to be looking at how you run a Junior Open. Some of the things that have been mentioned already today by both Emily and John about some of the ideas that you can bring into Junior Opens and how you can make it better for yourself is something which I'm quite passionate about. It's something I get very much involved with, organising those types of events. I've been successful at it, but I'm not a rocket scientist. It's not particularly difficult to do. You just get the right message across, and that's what we'll be looking at in a couple of weeks' time, about how to get more players playing golf, how to get them to your golf club, and how to put on a show for them. That's what the Progress Junior Golf podcast is all about. And we'll be doing more of those podcasts in weeks and months ahead. So thanks very much for watching. Thanks very much, John. Thanks very much, Emily. And everyone, have a good evening.
Thank you.